I recall some years ago my daughter read the open letter to my son. She asked me a very candid question. Daddy, where's my letter? It was a valid question, but at the time I don't believe she understood the circumstance surrounding that letter. Now, after many years have passed, I sit down to answer her question, although under different circumstances, but just as poignant and just as heart-rending. A personal letter to my daughter. Growing up in the South as a small boy, my life ambition was not like those of most boys my age. My desire wasn't to become a doctor, an attorney, or athlete, or any one of those noble vocations. No, my primary goal was simply to become a father. Perhaps this goal was rooted in my childhood when my father and mother separated and she would have to rear 3 small children all alone. And it was then I made a solemn promise to myself. If I ever became a father, my children would never be without their dad. In 1969, your brother was born, and I believe I was the world's most jubilant father. But this was a time when I was caught up in the inner city drug trade, and I foolishly allowed his young eyes to see things he should have never seen. 3 years later, you were born, and by this time my wretched life was completely out of control. I was not only selling drugs, but I had also become addicted. And my addiction was just like making love to a gorilla. You never do till the gorilla say you do. Your birth was a blessing, my daughter, and a perfect time for me to look at the cards I was holding and see it was a losing hand. This was the perfect time for me to toss my cards on the table and walk away, never to return to the game again. But I didn't. I continued to return time after time, trying to turn a lousy pair of deuces into a royal straight flush. You see, the gorilla still wasn't through yet. In 1972, 6 months after your birth, I was arrested for murder and sentenced to life. And clearly it was the judge's intent for me never to leave alive. Upon my arrival, I was reminded of the words of Oscar Wilde, who once wrote, "We always hurt the ones we love. The brave man killed with a sword, but a coward, he killed with a kiss." And I became acquainted with so many other men who were killing the ones they loved with a kiss, exactly like me. And here I was destined to die behind 4 gigantic concrete walls. I reiterate, no experience can prepare one for life in prison. It is a hell that knows no mercy. It is a million dreams that will never be fulfilled. It is too many tears without laughter, too much darkness without light. And this was to be my word for 40 long, painful years. Grasping I was never going home, my days were consumed with drugs, booze, and hustling. The gorilla still wasn't through. So this would be my existence for 13 more years. The noted author Paul Laurence Dunbar wrote, "We wear the mask that grin and lie. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile. We smile because we know what you see is not what you get. So we wear the mask to camouflage our weakness, our pain, and our insecurities." The hardest part of your father's prison life was being separated from you and your brother. Yet nothing could slow me down, not even cancer. In 1979, I was diagnosed with liver cancer. But after 4 months of chemo, the doctors could not find any traces of the disease. So I was released from the prison infirmary back into the prison population. This should have been enough for your father to do some self-examination, but it wasn't. I couldn't wait to get back into the rat race. What would it take for me to learn? It would take 6 more agonizing years of drugging and boozing for me to hit rock bottom. And I remember crying out to the Lord that day on October, I could not live another day in my present condition. And this was all that life had to offer. It just wasn't worth living. And there in all my pain, loneliness, and near madness, I found a Savior that loved me more than my earthly mind could comprehend. And that was the first day and first page in your father's life and discourse. Every day I thought about you and your brother. As our communication was restricted to letters, phone calls, and visits, I didn't know that your brother had become a major player in the drug trade until he made front page in the Washington Post. As you know, he was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and drug distribution, but found not guilty on the murder, was given 30 years for the distribution. As I read about his reckless and violent life, I saw a picture of myself, and I was overcome with guilt. I should have seen it coming because the die was cast while he still was in the cradle. I wrote him every day because I wanted him to know that I no longer was the person that he thought I was. So I had to try to reach him before it was too late. And that was the purpose of my open letter to him. With all my heart, I wanted to be a good father, but I just didn't know how. He was close to me as my heartbeat. In less than 4 years, he was back on the street and back in the game. After all, he was Big Dave, the man of the hour, sacrificing short-term pleasure for long-term pain, just like his father. Less than few months, he was murdered, shot in the back, 2 days before his 24th birthday. And I will never forget the words he wrote in one of his last letters. He said, "Daddy, all my life, I wanted to be just like you." Every time I read this and think about it, my heart literally breaks into 1,000 little fragments. How could it not? What happened? What happened, my daughter? How did my yearning to be a father turn out to be so tragic? What happened? Well, your father is home now, and in 2013, I would enter a world like Back to the Future, and you would have to introduce me to a technology world that I knew absolutely nothing about. You would have to teach me how to use a cell phone, text, emails, and even how to ride the subway. And yes, we would spend an enormous amount of time together. I tried too hard to be a perfect father, but I had to learn that perfection is not a characteristic of human nature. I would make a lot of mistakes and bad judgment, but in the end, they only serve as a catalyst to strengthen our relationship into what it is today. I have been blessed to achieve some of life's goals, but none can compete and compare with that of being a father. Now, I think I got it, my daughter. I think I know what being a father is all about. And every time I hear you call me Dad, it strikes a chord in my tender heart. And every time you see your father, he wants you to see a reflection of Jesus Christ, just as the moon reflects the glory of the sun, for he is the source of my life. You were there with me when I was baptized on October the 20th, 2015. And when the minister announced with a family of cheese stand and share his baptism, I saw you leap from your chair and rush to the side of the pool and record your father's baptism on your phone. But It was that look in your eyes and a smile upon your face. A look that said to me, Dad, I'm so proud of you, and everything's gonna be all right. And so it was that night, my daughter. Your father turned another page and began to write the final chapter in his long journey. Yes, I'm home at last, and I have found my long lost promised land. And 1,000 nights I had to die, to one day die no more. So, happy birthday, my daughter. Love, your father. Cheese.